An introduction, Fred.
Hey.
Well, ladies and gentlemen,
Hey, flowered up, huh?
Welcome to our amazing book talk. Fred has done something that I haven't accomplished. Many of us, I don't know if we have any other published authors in the group. I don't think so. I think we have many journal articles published, but not a full book. And so it is just exciting for Fred to be able to share with us these stories that we've heard over the years as kids, and all of his amazing stories about being in the Peace Corps in Fiji, and so it's exciting that you finished the book, Fred. It's exciting that it's in the world, and it's just well written and beautiful. So with that, I don't know what else.
You did good.
There you go.
Did good.
That's your introduction.
So anyway, as Jess said, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Fiji Islands, almost 4 years, and I grew up nice, moderate Republican family, and John F. Kennedy is my hero. You know, from junior high on, man, I thought this guy is the greatest guy that ever happened. And I remember, you know, one of his speeches when he was running against Nixon, he's going to start the Peace Corps. And wow, when I grow up, I'm going to be a Peace Corps volunteer. And you know, I was idealistic, but I still consider myself a Kennedy volunteer. And I know my best friend, Ben Rogers, some of you may know Ben. He and I both, you know, when we graduate from Berkeley, we're going to join the Peace Corps. Well, Ben graduated a few months before I did, and he went to Nepal. And it's kind of interesting, when I first joined the Peace Corps, I was supposed to go to Chile. And my degree is in forestry. And maybe I should back up just a little bit and tell you, some of you don't know entirely what Peace Corps is. Most of you probably do, but a lot of you are younger. And for my generation, it was this powerful idea: we're going to save the world. And it's kind of like three missions in the Peace Corps. The first one, we take these people that have got technical skills, like I was a forester, get people that are great at business, people that are health, great to start, just across the whole arena, teaching science, going into these third world countries that just don't have these skills. And we're going to lift them up and introduce them to a lot of America's wonderful technology. Then the second part was that these people come back with a whole new sense of the world and a whole new sense, a much broader vision of what the world really is. And that helps build peace. And then the third thing is what this book is all about, is not only do we come back enlightened, but I like to believe we can enlighten a few thousand more people, each one of us. And if you have a few thousand volunteers and each of us enlighten a few thousand more people by writing books, maybe we really can help promote world peace. I still believe in world peace. I know one of my favorite movies is Miss Congeniality. Sandra Bullock, you know, there's a great line in there, you know, well, what are you here for? World peace. You know, all these beautiful little girls, and they off-top world, they don't even have a clue what world peace is. But I think most Peace Corps volunteers do have a clue, and I think by the time they're done with their 2 year, in my case 4 years, we kind of have a clue what we're trying to do. We think we are going to change the world, make it a better place. Little itty-bitty micro steps, if we can somehow show people that what binds us together, our common humanity, is bigger than what tears us apart. The fact that we're different, and we are different. And in Fiji, it was a pretty radical different. So anyway, getting back to my story, I was first accepted into the Peace Corps. I was supposed to go to Chile. And they had a huge forestry program. And I thought, wow, I get to learn to speak Spanish, second language for California, a great forestry program. And this is just great. Back in my day, University of California system, regardless whether it's Berkeley or UCLA or whatever, you had to either take or pass a history class. Well, I was pretty arrogant, and I always knew I was the smartest guy in the room, and I maxed out, you know, my SATs and all that stuff. You know, take the test. I'm not going to waste my time on a silly history class. I just take this test, and then I can take something. You know, I'd take an ornithology class, or I'd take a class of something that I'm interested in instead of history. Well, arrogant me, I take the test like a week before graduation, and one question on it: take any historical movement in the United States from beginning to the current time, and write a like a 10-page essay on it. Piece of cake. Conservation movement. I know John Muir. I know Gifford Pinchot. I know these big figures, Rachel Carson, all these people that were the current gurus for conservation. So I wrote my 10-page essay and turned it in. Okay, I did that. Then I get a big fail on it, and I go, bang on the door of the province. What's going on here? He said, well, that wasn't a historical movement. What do you mean? He said, well, I was thinking the black movement, labor movement, women's movement. I said, what? He says, sorry, tree hugger, but you failed. And so I had to go back one more quarter to Berkeley, and the university said, no problem, we'll take you back. And contact the Peace Corps, and they said, yeah. And I contacted my draft board, yeah, we'll give you deferment for a couple more months. You get your degree, and then you go in the Peace Corps, and you're cool. So, and the Peace Corps says, yeah, we got a program for you in Fiji. Fiji. I'd never heard of Fiji. I mean, Chile. I knew Chile. But the biggest blessing in this particular thing was some of you, my age anyway, heard of the Allende. And the Allende, it was the CIA. He was a ruler of Chile, and the CIA threw him out because he wasn't pro-American enough, I guess, and established their own puppet. And so Chile threw all the Peace Corps volunteers out. Everybody of America was thrown out because they didn't appreciate the CIA messing with their country, which was totally right. But if I'd gone there, I'd have been there for like 2 months or 6 months or whatever it was, it would have been sent home. And instead I went to Fiji and changed my life. Fiji and me were like, hand in a glove. It was an amazing, wonderful fit for my mentality, what I wanted to do, and just the culture. I found it marvelous. Some of you read my book, and as I get done telling you my stories, you can ask me questions, and we can go into areas which you found interesting. Like today I was chatting with Dave. He couldn't come. He and Sandy couldn't come because they got something else going. And of course, Dave wanted to know, what about the sex life of Fijians? Well, I do have a chapter in there on it. And they are very promiscuous people. Growing up in a very conservative Christian Science background, I was pretty straight arrow and had not lost my virginity when I got into Fiji. And here I am in this really promiscuous situation. And like one of the little things I talk about, early on, I'm out at Senganga, I'm out in the bush, and they put me in this little house. The Brits from the beginning, it was a British colony back when I went to Fiji, they were going to have professional forces. They had this nice British house, except it didn't have electricity and didn't have hot water. But it was a great looking little house. And so anyway, but it was up on the hill, like, the Brits always have the man in charge up on the hill. But I had to cross a bridge. I had to cross a creek, but they thought I'd just take one of the Land Rovers home. I said, no, I can walk. So anyway, my guys built me a little bridge, and I walked across the bridge. And I don't know, I'd been there like 3 or 4 days, and I'm walking across my bridge, and there's all these topless women down there washing the clothes. And all these beautiful women with no clothes. I mean, they had a sulu wrapped around their waist. But I about fell off the bridge. Oh, these women thought that was the funniest damn thing in the world. It is hooting and howling at me, They're flipping their boobs, and I'm trying to hang on to the bridge and not fall off. And they thought it was so funny. And so I made it to my house and ate my lunch. Next day, they're waiting for me. They didn't have any clothes, but they were waiting for me because they didn't have to wash them. But man, here, let's get the white boy again. Let's make him fall off the bridge. And this went on like 3 days in a row. Asked my guys, man, what do I do? These women they're just taking the mick out of me. So they gave me all the obscene comments and the obscene gestures and all the things I should do. So I gave them back the Fijian stuff, and it wasn't fun anymore. And then it became just once a week they were really down there washing the clothes, but it wasn't trying to make the white boy fall off the bridge. But that was kind of one of the many introductions to me into the Fijian culture. the Fijian culture that I learned, and back in the 60s and early 70s when I was there was no internet. There were no cell phones. I was really isolated. I was out there. And airmail, it took a week for me to get a letter from home. And I was cut off. But it also allowed me to really, really get into the Fijian culture. I was out Singanga Forestry Station where I was in charge. I had 100 guys working for me. That was pretty heady stuff for a kid just graduated. If I'd taken a job with the Forest Service, I might have had a crew of 2 or 3 guys as a graduate forester. Here I had like 100 guys working for me. I had 3 or 4 guys who had had technical school. They'd gone to a couple of years to technical school in Australia or Great Britain. But I was the only, quote, professional. And that's kind of the British way of doing things. But it was heady stuff, and it was but again, I was pretty arrogant, thought I could do anything, and it worked. But the Fijians, they were just so gentle on this young white kid who didn't really know what he was doing. I mean, I was pretty clueless. And my best friend I dedicated the book to, Esarame Sivivatu, marvelous guy, and he was one of my drivers actually. But Esarame was one of the half dozen guys of my 100 guys that worked for me that actually spoke pretty good English. And Esarame, when I was first there, started taking me back to his village on weekends. We'd go spearfishing, and we'd get the village. Esarame had a boat. And back in those days, it was really cool. Again, I was there at a great time because there were no outboard motors in Korotumbu, and I learned to sail these native craft, Fiji style. I'd never sailed before. Well, I'd been on a sailboat, but I'd never really sailed. And it was marvelous. And again, I got in there at a time when the culture there was no television. There was Radio Fiji. And I'll get later, and I actually had my own talk show on Radio Fiji. But so Sarami just kind of adopted me into his Matangali. The Matangalis were the tribal unit in Fiji. And Sarami was well respected, and he just brought me into the Matangali. The cool thing about Esarame was, like 30 years later, the Peace Corps sent another volunteer into that part, Madawata, which is where Singanga was. This was not a forester. This was a young woman who was a business manager, and she had great business skills, and she went there to help set up some co-ops and get them to start marketing some of the products that Korotumbu could grow and make mats and so on. And her name was Karen. And lo and behold, Sarami, now he's a village elder. He's now in the 60s. And Sarami adopted Karen as his daughter. He'd already had a Peace Corps experience. He adopted me as his brother. And now he adopts Karen as his daughter. And it's interesting, Peace Corps is a tough venue for single women. You know, some of us know Betsy Shays, Chris Shays, who was a congressman, and Betsy and Chris were in Fiji same time I was. And Betsy did fine because she had Chris, because men, and it's talk about a culture which, I mean, we're pretty bad misogynists in this country, but nothing compared to Fiji. I mean, women are second-class citizens, pretty typical of a good chunk of the world. And like in Fiji, I think, I don't know, 80-90% of the single women volunteers went home before their 2 years were up. It was brutal because you just weren't given the respect and you weren't taken seriously. I know one girl that didn't live that far from me, and we became good friends, and she lasted about 6 months. And one of the things that really bothered her was showers. You know, she was in a village, and it was nothing to just, everybody, the open shower, and she wasn't used to being out there showering. And of course, all the Fijian men wanted to look at what's a white girl look like. And I remember going down to Korotumbu, and I'd take showers. And at first, the women go, what does a white boy look like? But you know, like, it wasn't a big deal. I'd been in sports in school, and it didn't really bother me. But you know, it bothered American women to have you know, these guys oogling them when they're taking a shower. You know, it just didn't feel comfortable. And not only, and that's just a small piece of it. They weren't taken serious. No matter what, they were second-class citizens, and that's just an awful lot of the world. And again, you know, when I left this country, women didn't have anywhere near it. And there was no Title IX. Women that weren't like. I played tennis for spring and fall because there was no women's tennis team in the fall. You know, my girls, they all grew up playing tennis in the fall, and then the men played in the spring. But, and we thought that we were pretty backward in this country. Shoot, we were nothing. Women at least could vote. Women at least had rights, but not in Fiji. You know, it was a real misogynist culture, and I think a good chunk of the world's that way. So anyway, Sarami adopted me into the village, but as a result of Sarami adopting Karen as his daughter, and everybody knew this is my daughter, and he was a trusted elder of the village by then, and nobody messed with Karen, and she was totally accepted, given the stature that Sarami gave her, because you don't mess with Sarami's daughter. And the same way Sarami adopted me as his brother, that helped allow me to go fishing and do all these cool things, but allowed Karen to survive, and it's a huge difference. And that's, you know, Karen isn't in my book because I didn't even meet Karen. I published my book, and Karen says, I knew Sarami. He was my, you know, it was so cool. And she wrote actually a real short book about 10 pages or so. Short story, which was part of a group of stories that went out at the, I don't know, 50th anniversary of the Peace Corps or something. And her book went in there, and I've got a copy of Karen's book, and we've become friends. We've never met each other, but we've done Zoom together and that sort of thing. But anyway, you know, talk about a culture just radically different from our culture. I went back in time. It was, you know, one of the things a lot of people find interesting was the witch doctors. And I've got a chapter on witch doctors and cannibals. No, they aren't cannibals anymore, but they were witch doctors. And I did meet an old cannibal, but the witch doctors, I had even had a kind of serious encounter with a witch doctor. And it terrified me, and you read it in the chapter, but I think, you know, most of us here at Christian Science, or certainly understand what Christian Science is. Witch doctors have tremendous, and again, we're talking over 50 years ago when I was there. I was there 69, 70, 71, 72. So there's been some big changes, and I don't doubt the witch doctors don't have the power now that they did back when I was there. But back when I was there, the Western medical had taken over most of the good stuff of the witch doctor. Back in the day, you know, pre-contact, the witch doctor did good things and it did bad things. And if you were good, the witch doctor could help you and solve your health problems. And if the witch didn't like you, put a curse on you, and he could kill you. And in fact, I mentioned in my book, a friend of mine's best friend in a Fijian village. He lived in Kandavu. Kandavu at that time, witch doctors really had a tremendous amount of control. And this particular Peace Corps volunteer, he was in an outer village, just like I was, miles from other people that spoke English and all. But his best friend had gotten a teaching credential in New Zealand, come back to Kandavu, back to his village, teaching in the school. And as a school teacher, he had a little more money than the average local. And the witch doctor, and he's going to build himself a new house. And the witch doctor says, okay, I want the old roofing irons. And this guy said, well, you can buy it just like anybody else. He says, no, I'm the witch doctor. If I ask for something, you give it to me, because that's the way it works. And he says, well, I don't believe in you. You know, I've been educated overseas, and you can't scare me. And the witch said, you're going to regret this. And So the witch doctor starts doing the vodka drowning cow around this guy's house. This school teacher is a Fijian guy. And vodka drowning cow is you get the leaves and you do the mystical stuff, and at night you're doing it and you're casting the spells. This guy gets sick. And he dies. And everybody knows in the village that the witch doctors put the curse on him, and that's why he's died. So anyway, the Fijian belief is if the witch doctor puts a curse on you, he's put an evil spell into you, and you got to let the evil spirit out. And so they buried him in Fiji. You get rid of the body by burying it, just like that's similar to our way of getting rid of. At least back in the day, now mostly we bury it up and cast it up in the sky, cremate it, right? But back in those days in Fiji, and I'm sure they probably still do, everybody, you bury the body. So anyway, they buried the body in the village plot, and the relatives of this Fijian school teacher who had been cursed, they put the watch on the grave to make sure he doesn't get the spear into him, to let the evil spirit out. And they're watching around the clock, but lo and behold, the spear's in there, and everybody knew for a fact now he died because of the witch doctor. So my friend, he went to the local authorities and said, this guy killed my best friend. And the witch doctor heard that he'd gone to the authorities and said, listen, white boy, you better get out of town or you're next. Well, he told the Peace Corps, he said, you got to get me out of here because this guy's going to get me. And he was a believer by then. I mean, when your best friend has got the curse and been killed, you're a believer. And anyway, back in those days with Peace Corps, if you quit early, we were getting like, $600 a year, or I can't remember what it was, but some ridiculous, paltry little sum of money going into a bank account, which we got when we got done with our volunteer stuff. And they said, well, we'll take your airplane ticket back to the States out of this little paltry money they were going to give us to go back to graduate school or something. I think it's a couple thousand, but anyway, it wasn't much. But we're getting your airplane ticket back from Fiji. It's going to come out of that. Well, I'm a good volunteer, but I can't stay here. So they transferred into Mombasa, which was the divisional capital, about an hour from where I was. So I would go in on Saturday or Fridays. I'd go in to get the pay. I'd do a pay run, and then Saturdays in rugby season, I was playing rugby. I'd go in. So I'd beat this guy, and we had 6 or 8 Peace Corps volunteers in Mombasa. We'd get together in the evenings. We'd go to a restaurant. We had several restaurants in Mombasa. We had Hindu restaurants. We had Chinese restaurant. But anyway, so he got transferred into Mombasa for his last 6 months. And so I got to know this guy. He told me this story. And I had a couple other encounters with witch doctors. He said I had my own encounter with a witch doctor, which was spooked me. I mean, really, really freaked me out too. And they're scary people. And the thing is, and I think those of you that have, are familiar with both Dan Jensen and Jack Hubble, they've written some articles on hypnotism. And it's basically what the witch doctor's doing is mass hypnotism. And we all heard of the placebo. The placebo basically is what the doctors are trying to explain why when you give it, they're testing, is this medicine work? Does this make the person had disease X, and we've come up with a cure for disease X, so we'll give them the white pill. But if we really know whether this thing is really making a difference, we give 50% of the people the real white pill, and 50% is a placebo. It has just sugar, but the people don't know it. And then we look at the results. And if the people with the real deal do much better than the people that get the placebo, then this is a good medicine. But the amazing thing is, and all the studies show, that the people that get the white pill that just has sugar on it actually has a lot of improvement. It's not as good. Maybe 60% of the people that get the real deal get better, but with the placebo, maybe 20%. You say, well, wait a minute, this is just sugar. How come they got better? Well, that's the placebo effect. This is mass hypnotism. And I think, those of us that have had class instruction in Christian Science understand what's going on here. It's in our head. This is not just luck of the draw, but, the statistics show it, that people got better because of the placebo effect. But there's also the nocebo effect, and that's the negative side. Well, the witch doctor and the witch doctors, it depends on how much you're believing in it. And in the witch doctors, they had actually, back in the day, supposedly, pretty good healing. It wasn't, like the 20% with the placebo. It was like, 70, 80%. Most of the people got better when the witch doctor was doing his thing for them. But along comes Western medicine, and instead of let's say 70% the witch doctors get, they're getting 80, 90% improvement with the Western medicine. So who wants to go to a witch doctor when you get the white doctor with the white coat and he does a better job? So the witch doctors kind of got put out of business on that. But on the nocebo, there's nobody taking that thing up. So the witch doctor still had control over that. It's the same mass hypnotism, still getting into your head. And just like my Fijian friend that died, no question, the witch doctor got into his head. That guy didn't just luck of the draw die when the witch doctor starts doing Vakadravnikal around his house. That's the nocebo effect. And I know when I had my little run-in with the witch doctors, I was scared, and so were my friends, because you didn't mess with a witch doctor, and that's the nocebo effect. It's your fear. We all know fear is the mind killer. Whether you're a Christian Scientist but fear destroys us. Not that's the mind killer. Anyway, take a quick break. Lose my voice. But anybody any quick questions, and I'll move into something else, sharks or cannibals or...
Now I know why you like the shark songs.
What's that?
Now I know why you like the shark songs.
Oh, yeah, the baby shark, yeah. Had a few of those, plenty of shark stories. But anybody have anything that read the book or didn't read the book that got a question?
I just wondered how much time you spent in the water versus in the forests.
When I was in Kortumbu, well, I should say at Senganga, I was working in Senganga, and we worked 5 days a week. And but then, except during rugby season where I was playing rugby down in Lambasa, I would go every Saturday, Sunday down to Kortumbu, which was about, I can't remember what it was. I mentioned in the book because I researched it then. I can't remember exactly, but it was a bus ride, and we don't have to look it up right now. But we take the bus down to Kortumbu, and then Sarami and I go fishing on Saturday with a couple more of his friends. And so I was diving almost every Saturday except for the 2 or 3 month rugby season, which later became the second year I was there at Senganga. I convinced my guys that we should play soccer also, and that also had like a 10-week season. But if I wasn't in Lambasa doing sports, I was in Kortumbu diving, and we speared a lot of fish. It was fun. I mean, I loved that. This was all free diving, and it's interesting. The Fijians, they had equivalent to a Hawaiian sling, where you get a big chunk of inner tube and you put it on a big piece of steel, and that was your propulsion. Your range was like only, 3 or 4 feet. I saved up my money, went to Morris Hedstrom, and I bought and all my Fijian friends called it the James Bond gun, because they'd all seen James Bond, and he was spearing things with his. My gun was not as sophisticated as James, but it had about, 10, 12, 15 foot range. So I was popular on the boat because I had better range. They were better divers than me, but I had a better gun. And it amazed me, they didn't go down and buy the same gun. They were used to, of course, there were some reasons. One was with sharks. With their big spears, they could fend off the sharks. My James Bond gun wasn't nearly as effective in shoving the sharks away. And these are just little reef sharks. You know, they're 4, 5, 6, 7 foot. They're not big sharks, but they can still get you. I mean, I had friends who were damaged by these sharks. Anyway, I spent a lot of time in the water. I loved it. And then last 2 years, I was in Suva, and I learned to surf. One of my good buddies there, Peter Hansen, he was a white guy, worked for Forestry Department, and he taught me to surf. So then, every Saturday and sometimes Sunday too, we go surfing. And there was a really great surf break, only we'd drive in Peter's car, and then we'd catch a boat up in the Sorry River, and then there was a great break, and it was perfect for a beginning surfer like me. There were about 6 months where we had like 3, 4 foot waves. Sometimes we get 6 or 7s, but it's normally like 3 or 4, just perfect for a beginning surfer like me. And so I remember Peter saying, man, it's a good thing we only have 2-day weekends because we need 5 days to recover.
What was your project that you were doing?
First 2 years at Senganga, we were planting Caribbean pine. And Caribbean pine is a very fast-growing pine that native to the Caribbean. And we had on the dry side of the island, and that's where Senganga was, with these Talasinga lands. The Talasinga lands, Fiji, like Hawaii, like most high islands, has a dry side and a wet side. And the dry sides burn easily. And Fijians, like most indigenous peoples, used fire for hunting, for all sorts of reasons. And Fijians, the biggest thing was it's a lot easier to spear a pig if you got the fire chasing him and he's running down his paths and you're waiting at the choke points with the pig gonna come through and you're waiting with your. In fact, you know, I went hunting with my Fijian friends, and the only time we ever got pigs was when we did controlled burns. But yeah, when you got the pigs screaming away from the fire, it was pretty easy to ambush them. And because again, we're just using spears, we're not using guns. Nobody had guns, but good thing in Fiji, because the Fijians and the Hindus hate each other. And if they had guns, they'd be shooting each other. But with spears, you know, pretty short range again, is pretty good for pigs, but it, and I was a lousy spear chucker. And, you know, Fijians, they could, those, I don't know, 10, 20 pound spears, they could chuck them like 20 feet and with some accuracy. Shoot, it was reversed. Now I'm like down to the 3 foot and they're up with the, because these guys, of course they're a lot bigger than me too. You know, the average Fijian was probably 6 foot, 6'2", 200, 250. I mean, they're big guys, just like Samoans. And I was pretty puny. I was fast, so I could play rugby. I played wing. And I don't know if any of you know about rugby, but the wing is the little guy, the last guy is supposed to punch it over. He's supposed to be the fast guy. But I was fast, but I was a dink. I mean, Fijians were all bigger than me.
What's this about Hindus and?
Well, the Fiji was a British colony. In fact, when I first got there, it was still a British colony. And about 6 months into my stay in Fiji, it became independent. But when the Brits first colonized Fiji, they realized great soil for growing sugarcane. But you had to get somebody to do the nasty, dirty work of growing the sugarcane and harvesting the sugarcane. And Fijians, they don't work for somebody else. They're very, very proud people. Fijian men make war, they hunt, they fish, but they sure as hell don't work for other people growing crops. Fijian women, but no way Fijian women are going to work for some white guy. So the Brits, you know, they could beat them, they could, you know, try to pay them, ridiculous, whatever. But Fijian men don't do that kind of work. It was interesting. They don't do sugarcane, but they found forestry, reestablishing forests was a whole different thing. The forests were sacred. The forests were important. and growing forest was cool. That was honorable work. And to Fijians, everything is about honor. So anyway, the Brits.
The battery's about to die. Can you hold that thought? We need to change the batteries.
Oh, okay, sure. Now let me catch my